global happenings today. We communicate, we analyze global news. Stay tuned.
Hello fam, welcome back to our channel. We want to say a big thank you for as many of us who are subscribed to our channel, and for some of us who have been sharing our videos. God bless you real good. If you have not subscribed to our channel, what are you waiting for? Do so to get updates on what is happening around us, particularly in Nigeria and Africa as a whole. But let's go straight into the news of the day. We're looking at the executive order being raised by the presidency. The governors are reacting very negatively to it, and some persons have been turning it up, others have been turning it down. For the governors, the governors are saying that this is a tyranny rule, a rule that shows that we are already entering the military era. While some persons are saying it's a way to go, that this will definitely, separate the three arms of government and allow them to function independently, just the way they were created. Okay, but we're going to take case studies so that we can understand this verdict very well. But also, the federal government has also reacted to the negative reactions to of what the governors of the day are saying concerning the executive order being raised by President Muhammadu Buhari, and they have warned also that there will be consequences if they disobey the executive order. But let's look at it, the broader perspective. Before now, the federal government gives allocation to the governors. The governors have the sole right to sign those allocation. Now, the allocation comes in lump sum to each state of the federation. Now, the governors of those each states will sign and disburse to each arm of government as at when due. The money comes. Let's take the typical example of Imo State, Hope Uzodinma, for example. He gets the sum, he signs the one that is due for judiciary, the state judiciary, he signs and gives to the state judiciary. The one that is good, that is fit for the legislature, the state legislature, he gives to them, and the local government. Now, what that means also is that by default, Hope Uzodinma, I'm using him as a case study here. This cuts across the whole governors, the whole state in Nigeria. Now, Hope Uzodinma now, if he doesn't find, if the judiciary team in his state are not in his good books, he can while around, find his excuses, and flimsy excuses why he shouldn't pay them their allowances, and may likely refuse signing or delaying that which belongs to the judiciary arm of the government simply because they are not in his good books. And he can also, by default, being that he has the financial control of judiciary's allocation, he can decide to victimize one or two judges who are not in his good books. He may just call them, so maybe out of camera, and say, look, this guy is not in my favor, I don't really like him. So they can walk around and see how that person, is being either relegated to the background or being removed altogether. These are all the general politics that play. Now, by all this while, this has been the control that the executive arm has over their judiciary and legislative arm in each state. And that's why it looks as if these guys have so much power. You could still remember that as governors of each state, they generally do not like the central controlling them. They believe as the executive governors of each state, they are the principal officer. They should decide what happens in their state. A typical example is what Governor Sh0wd0wn did, which is also very true in true federalism, where every governor has a right. In fact, he is the president, quote unquote, of his state. He takes decisions for his people, duly elected. So in true federalism, yes, to a great extent, he's right. Now, if they like that if they like to exercise their franchise, they like to exercise their full functionality without the interference of the central, which is the federal government, I see no reason why they have been remotely controlling, vis-a-vis the issue of the allocation funds of the judiciary arm and the legislative arm of their state and also the local government. If you check very recently, in fact, check for like 8 years now. Yes, historians, follow me. If you have been living in Nigeria, please follow me. You will notice that to a great extent, some persons even wonder, are there really local government councillors? Because yes, they are there. They are like figurehead. Because if the funds get to the local governments, okay, the LGAs, the councillors and the rest, you find out that there will be a lot of grassroots representation. But in Nigeria today, those guys are just figureheads. Sometimes you go to these local government council offices, it's as good as empty. At times they will tell you they've not been paid for 4 months, for 6 months, and they will tell you that they're running the but they believe that one the government will pay. But these allocations have been given every month. The governor signs each allocations to the judiciary, to the legislature, and will omit deliberately the local government chair. If for any reason, maybe the person that was enacted is not his loyalist, that local government chairman or that local government will suffer until that tenure is over. And there's nothing he can do, because the truth of the matter is the sole signatory of that allocation fund is the executive governor of that state. Now you now begin to see that though the three arms of government are supposed to be working independently, but the executive seem to be controlling the three arms of government remotely by virtue of financial strength. Now, in the days of Abba Kyari, when Abba Kyari was alive, he saw those lapses. He now said, look, let's work around this. Look, governors, you guys are, the way these things are running, you still have powers over the judiciary. They can't make decisions independently simply because, if they do anything not contrary to what you want, you have a way of bringing them to their knees by virtue of the financial strength you have over them, being the sole signatory of, or being the signatory of the allocation funds of that state. So Abba Kyari, the late Abba Kyari, was working with them. They're trying to. Don't also forget that in the 8th Senate, the then Senate President Bukola Saraki, had already signed the executive order permitting the federal government, the president, to enact that on autonomy of each state, so that every state legislature and judiciary of each state can function independently and can checkmate the excesses of the executive arm of the government. And that's where the problem lies. And that's why you see the governors of each state reacting, calling it tyranny. That the presidency should have waited, okay? Let them pass it into law. Let the senator, that's the federal legislators, that's the red chamber, look into it, amend the constitution and pass it into law so that he can, have that right to do so. But by the power of the executive order being already enacted and done by the 8th Senate, has already given President Muhammad Buhari to do so. Now, the president have some of the governors have reacted, saying they will go through this. Like they will go through the legal way. They will sue this. They've been talking about that, saying it in hush tones. No one wants to really speak out or say as this governor said. But you could see that they are disgruntled, that they want to take away the powers they've been enjoying for so many years. Now the federal government have reacted, and that's through Malami himself. The federal government has already warned that any state government which withholds funds meant for their respective houses of assembly and judiciary will get their allocation deducted at source by the Accountant General of the Federation and remitted directly to the affected state organs. Have you now seen, bit by bit, every state, fairly recently in the same Imo state, I could still remember that Hope Uzodinma had to tell the House of Rep in Imo State that for them to see him, they need to have a pass. Are you serious? A pass? You heard me right. Although initially he denied it, but the state senator said that is the truth. That each time they try to see the governors to discuss some issues that state affairs that affect Imo State, they will say, do you have a pass from the Hope Uzodinma, the governor? He's like, why would I need a pass as a senator? As a honorable member, why do I need a pass? I want to see the governor. They will say no. So it brought a lot of rank, which means he's even trying to subjugate them. Fairly recently, he still bought judiciary 21 brand new SUV cars. Yet his civil servants in Imo State have not collected salary from January, of which the barrister woman in Imo State, that's Broadcasting Corporation, mentioned it, and they gave her indefinite suspension for daring to question the government of the day. Now you begin to see buying cars for the judiciary so that they don't speak up as I went due, plus other things that has followed. It clearly shows that bit by bit they all want to pocket the other two arms of government if the executive if this doesn't happen, that's probably what you will see. They will just be there for their sake, but they don't function their right, and true democracy may not, prevail. Now, the federal government have already warned that if they try that, they will deduct their allocations, that's their salaries of these arms, and source and pay them directly. And I'm sure they will not really like this, because the Attorney General of the Federal and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, made the clarification yesterday in further explanation of the executive order signed by President Muhammadu Buhari, that's this last Friday that passed, giving effect to the commencement of the implementation of the law, which he had earlier signed into law last year. That's the 8th Senate that we talked about. Although some governors are reportedly to be unhappy, they have been reported to be very unhappy with the implementation of the executive order, which was passed by the 8th Senate, 8th National Assembly, and accepted to by the president. The AGF, Malami, explained that there was no going back on the matter, which had become part of the country's constitution. Malami believes that the presidential action would not only strengthen the two arms of state institutions, but would also go a long way in making them more independent, which is what we talked about at the beginning of this discussion, and accountable in line with the tenets of democracy. Because if we do not separate the three arms of governance properly, there will not be true democracy. The executive arm can just sit back. If you insult him, you can just carry DSS, like what is happening in most of the states now. Any journalist that reports negatively about a governor, the next thing you see is DSS or a police just pick up the person, put the person in cell, go to prison. Let us go to the process now. You can no. If the judge, if they say okay, let's grant him bail, they will still the next thing we hear, the police will say go and meet we can't release you until the governor approves. So the judiciary that passed it, allowed him to pass the sentence that he should be released, is not strong enough again. You just see that that executive monopoly, of power, that the executive seem to be waging over other arms, and this needs to stop. Now, the AGA pointed that if any state fails to remit the amount meant for the legislature and the judiciary, the OAGF will, by the EO, that's an executive order, authorize the deduction of the amount from source, from the federation account, by the Accountant General of the Federation. And these are the things we are looking at. But that's why we're going to wrap it up, because honestly, if we want to look at it, we can go on and on. What do you think? I feel this is a welcome development. I may not be always in support of what the presidency does always, simply because we're looking at it very critically. But on this one, I believe is on point, so that we can have true democracy, especially in our states, to checkmate the excesses of our governors, especially when it comes to tyranny and oppressing their people. What do you think? Let's meet in our comment section. Let's interact. What do you think? Do you think for the first time the president is really very much on point, or do you think that is actually high-handedness and is actually using a tyranny, a military era, to do whatever he thinks is